The next sunrise found Sarah in her element, surrounded by improvised scientific equipment in an abandoned warehouse. The heart of stars hovered above a makeshift containment field, its miniature galaxies casting dancing shadows on the walls. Lyra and Vex worked beside her, their liquid metal skin flowing as they manipulated technology that blended physics with what seemed like magic. Energy signature growing, Sarah reported, watching patterns form on her modified sensors. Whatever we're doing, it's getting attention. Good, Vex transmitted. Drawing dark ones out. Making them reveal true nature. The plan was audacious, perhaps insane. Use the heart of stars not to hide, but as a beacon, forcing their enemies to show themselves before they were ready. But first, they had to survive what was coming. Sarah checked the lightning weapon, now modified with her understanding of thermodynamics. She discovered that by cycling the energy through a series of carefully calibrated heat sinks, she could use it without risking hypothermia. Human ingenuity meeting alien technology halfway. The first warning came from the masking crystal, its steady pulse turning erratic. Multiple signatures approaching, Sarah announced. More than before. Much more. Lyra's skin rippled with determination. Time to show humanity truth. Ready? Sarah nodded, starting the sequence they'd prepared. The heart of stars pulsed, sending out waves of energy that their sensors would redirect to every major population center. Not enough to reveal everything, humanity wasn't ready for that, but enough to let people see through the Dark One's disguises. The warehouse doors burst inward. Liquid metal figures poured in, some still wearing the faces of military officers and government agents, others abandoning pretense for their true fluid forms. Behind them came their human collaborators, the ones who'd chosen to serve rather than resist. The heart, their leader demanded, its voice rippling like mercury. Surrender it, and your deaths will be quick. Sarah raised the lightning weapon. Counteroffer, leave Earth, never return, and you get to keep existing. The Dark One's surface rippled with what might have been amusement. Brave words from a primitive species. You cannot comprehend what we offer, perfect order, perfect unity. Perfect death, Vex transmitted, the words echoing in everyone's minds. The child's power had grown, touching not just Sarah but all present. Show them, Mother. Lyra raised their hands, and the heart of stars flared with blinding light. Through their modified sensors, Sarah watched as the energy pulse reached out across the globe. In every major city, every hidden base, every infiltrated institution, the Dark One's disguises began to fail. The leader launched itself forward, its form becoming a deadly whirlwind of liquid metal. Sarah fired the lightning weapon, the blast of absolute cold turning its front edge to brittle shards. But more followed, an endless wave of flowing death. Sarah. Vex's mental voice cut through the chaos. Heart needs anchor. Needs human connection to complete pattern. Understanding flooded her mind through their link. The heart of stars wasn't just revealing the Dark Ones, it was offering humanity a choice. Accept the truth about their place in a larger universe or remain isolated and vulnerable. Sarah reached for the sphere, even as battle raged around her. Lyra's cold field powers and her modified weapon kept the enemy at bay, but they were overwhelmed. The moment her hands touched the heart, everything changed. Energy coursed through her, human warmth meeting stellar power. Through the heart, she felt connections forming, not just with Lyra and Vex people, but with other species, other worlds that had resisted the Dark Ones. Earth wasn't alone. Humanity didn't have to face this threat in isolation. The Dark Ones sensed the change. Their leader screamed in frequencies that shattered windows. What have you done? Opened the door, Sarah answered, feeling knowledge flow through her. Humanity isn't your experiment anymore. We're part of something larger now. The heart of stars pulsed one final time, and the Dark Ones began to dissolve. Not dying, but being forced back into their true forms, their ability to maintain physical shape stripped away. Around the world, Sarah felt their influence crumbling as humanity awoke to a new reality. Choice made, Vex transmitted proudly. Earth protected now. Connected. As the last of the Dark Ones fled, returning to whatever cold space had spawned them, Sarah looked at her alien friends with new understanding. You knew this would happen. The crash, finding me, all of it, you were leading us to this moment. Lyra smiled, an expression they'd learned from her. Led ourselves to you. Humanity needed to make choice freely. You showed us we chose well. The heart of stars dimmed, its work complete. But the connections it had forged remained. Around the world, people were waking up to a universe far larger and more complex than they'd imagined. There would be chaos, fear, denial, but also hope, determination, and discovery. What happens now? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. Now, Vex transmitted, taking her hand, we build bridges. Between worlds, between species. Dark Ones failed because they sought to make all things same. True strength is in differences working together. Sarah looked at her modified sensors, her adapted alien technology, and the friends who had become family. Sometimes the most important scientific discoveries weren't about finding what you were looking for, but being ready when it found you. Well, she said, smiling, I did always want to study alien life. Though I didn't expect to help save it in the process. The heart of stars pulsed warmly in agreement. Humanity had taken its first real steps into a larger universe, and Sarah Chen, scientist, defender, bridge between worlds, would help guide the way. Above them, the stars seemed brighter somehow, no longer distant points of light but beacons of possibility. The Dark Ones had wanted to make the universe cold and uniform. Instead, they had sparked a connection that would keep it warm, diverse, and very much alive. Dawn found them in an abandoned ranger station, miles from civilization. Sarah huddled near a carefully shielded fire, still fighting off the bone-deep chill from using the lightning weapon. Lyra and Vex sat nearby, their metallic skin dimmed to absorb what little heat they could spare for her. Must tell truth now, Vex transmitted, their mental voice heavy with importance. Why Dark Ones hunt us? Why Mother warned Council? Sarah looked up, seeing new intensity in their galaxy eyes. Lyra nodded solemnly and reached into their chest, literally reaching through their liquid metal skin. They withdrew an object that defied physics, a crystalline sphere that seemed to contain a universe in miniature. The heart of stars, Vex translated as Lyra held it out. Source of our travel between worlds. Source of Dark One's hunger. Sarah stared at the sphere, watching galaxies spin within its depths. This is how your people traverse space. Some kind of cosmic manipulation device. More, Lyra transmitted through their child. Is key to reality itself. Dark Ones seek it, would use it to reshape all worlds in their image. Make everything cold, dead, perfect in their vision. The implications staggered Sarah. Not just an invasion, but the potential rewriting of reality itself. That's why they can take human form, they're practicing for larger transformations. Vex's mental voice chimed with approval. Smart. See pattern. Dark Ones corrupt slowly, learn each species they take. Earth is, experiment for them. Test of methods. Sarah fought back a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. How long have they been here? How deep does the infiltration go? Decades by Earth time, Lyra transmitted. But focused on power centers, military, agencies that watch sky. Rural places, common people still mostly untouched. Dark Ones patient, methodical. Until you arrived with this. Sarah gestured to the sphere. Now they have to move faster, reveal themselves. Yes. Lyra's mental voice carried profound sadness. Brought danger to Earth. But had no choice. Council was compromised, home system falling. Needed to find new allies, species still free enough to fight. And you chose Earth? Why? Vex touched Sarah's hand, sharing a cascade of images, humans throughout history, facing overwhelming odds with determination. Building civilizations from nothing, reaching for the stars despite their limitations, showing kindness to strangers despite their fears. Humanity young, but strong, Vex explained. Not strongest, not most advanced, but most adaptable. Most willing to fight impossible odds. Like you in Cave, use simple physics against superior technology. This is why Dark Ones fear humans most. Sarah looked at the sphere again, understanding dawning. You didn't crash here by accident. You were looking for us, for humans who could help. Lyra nodded. Heart of Stars showed us way. Led to you, scientist who studies life among stars, who helps without question, who thinks quickly in danger. And this is why you gave me the lightning weapon, Sarah realized. You were testing me. Testing, yes, Vex transmitted. But also protecting. Weapon shows truth of user's heart. Dark Ones cannot touch it, no warmth in them to power it. Only those with warm hearts, with life spark, can wield such tools. Sarah stood, pacing the small cabin. So what's the plan? We can't exactly walk into the Pentagon and announce that shape-shifting aliens have infiltrated the government. No, Lyra agreed through Vex. But Heart of Stars has power. Can show truth to those ready to see. Can awaken humanity to danger slowly, carefully. But needs protection while working. Needs time. And that's where I come in. Sarah asked, already knowing the answer. Vex's mental voice carried a smile. You are bridge, Sarah Chen. Between your people and ours. Between science that is and science that could be. Will you help? Sarah looked at the lightning weapon, the masking crystal, and finally the Heart of Stars. She thought of all her years studying the possibility of alien life, never imagining she'd end up helping to save both her world and another. I have conditions, she said firmly. No more holding back information. I need to understand everything, about your technology, about these Dark Ones, about what we're really facing. Lyra's skin rippled with patterns that Sarah had learned to recognize as approval. The alien held out the Heart of Stars. Then let us show you. All of it. As Sarah reached for the sphere, she felt the weight of worlds settling onto her shoulders. Sometimes the most important scientific discoveries weren't just about understanding reality, they were about choosing which reality would survive. The Heart of Stars pulsed in her hands, and the true scale of both the danger and the opportunity ahead began to unfold in her mind. They had work to do. 3 days of relative peace had lulled Sarah into a false sense of security. She'd settled into a routine with her alien guests, studying their remarkable abilities while helping Vex refine their telepathic translation skills. But that peace shattered with her morning coffee, when the proximity alerts blared to life. The monitors showed a military convoy approaching, not the Department of Energy's subtle SUVs, but armored vehicles with satellite equipment. Leading them was a sleek black vehicle that seemed to ripple in the morning light, its surface unnaturally smooth. They found us, Vex's mental voice chimed in her mind, tinged with fear. The temperature in the room plummeted as both aliens' skin darkened to chrome. Sarah rushed to the window. The lead vehicle's surface wasn't just smooth, it was flowing like liquid metal. Those aren't human forces, are they? She asked, already knowing the answer. Dark Ones, Lyra transmitted through Vex. Take forms, steal faces. Hunt us across stars. The implications hit Sarah like ice water. The government agents weren't just looking for crashed aliens, they'd been infiltrated by these Dark Ones. She'd been naive to think their pursuers wouldn't follow them to Earth. We need to move. Now. Sarah grabbed her emergency pack, already modified for her guests' needs. There's a network of caves behind the station. If we can reach them dash. The station's lights flickered and died. Outside, the lead vehicle had stopped, its surface rippling more violently now. As Sarah watched in horror, it began to unfold like a deadly flower, revealing something that barely maintained humanoid form. Running not enough, Vex transmitted, clutching the masking crystal. Need mother's gift. Need to fight. Lyra made a series of sharp crystalline sounds, pulling something from beneath their metallic skin, a device that looked like frozen lightning given solid form. They pressed it into Sarah's hands, their galaxy eyes intense. What is this? Sarah asked, feeling energy pulse through the device. Weapon, Vex translated. Use is cold. Use is Dark One's nature against them. But dangerous, needs living warmth to power. Sarah understood the implications. These Dark Ones were vulnerable to extreme cold, perhaps why Lyra's species had evolved their temperature-controlling abilities. But using this weapon would drain her own body heat. A thunderous impact shook the station. Through the monitors, Sarah saw more liquid metal figures emerging from the other vehicles. The human soldiers with them moved oddly, their motions too smooth, too precise. They're all compromised, Sarah realized. How long have these things been on Earth? No time for those questions now. Sarah led them to her backup exit, a maintenance shaft that connected to the cave system. As they climbed down, she heard the station's doors being torn open above. The caves were a maze of twisted rock and underground streams, part of why she'd chosen this location for her research. Sarah had mapped them extensively, but now she was counting on that knowledge to keep them alive. They splashed through icy water, the aliens' natural cold field freezing their footprints behind them. Sarah clutched the lightning weapon, feeling it draw warmth from her hands. The masking crystal pulsed steadily, hiding their energy signatures, but their pursuers were too close to need sensors. A metallic screech echoed through the caves, the sound of something inhuman trying to mimic human speech. We can sense the child's power, the voice rippled. Surrender it, and the rest may live. Vex's mental voice trembled. Lie. Always lie. Take all, leave nothing. Sarah led them deeper, where the caves narrowed. She had a plan, but it was either brilliant or suicidal. Lyra, she whispered, can you lower the temperature further? Make it as cold as possible. The alien nodded, their skin shifting to an almost mirror-like state. The air around them began to crystallize, ice forming on the cave walls. Footsteps approached, too many, too rhythmic. Sarah raised the lightning weapon, feeling it pull more heat from her body. Her vision swam, but she forced herself to focus. The physics was simple, rapid temperature differentials in confined spaces caused explosive reactions. The first liquid metal figure rounded the corner, its surface struggling to maintain human form in the extreme cold. Sarah triggered the weapon. A beam of pure cold, colder than space itself, lanced out, catching the creature mid-transformation. The temperature differential created a shockwave that ripped through the tunnel, shattering the partially frozen being and sending its followers tumbling back. Run! Sarah gasped, her breath frosting in the air. The weapon had drained her dangerously, but their path was clear. They sprinted through the chaos, the sounds of pursuit now disorganized and confused. They emerged from a hidden cave mouth miles from the station, deep in the wilderness. Sarah collapsed, shivering uncontrollably. Lyra and Vex huddled around her, their combined cold fields creating a dome of ice that hid them from view. Brave, Vex transmitted, their mental voice warm with admiration. Like mother. Understand cold's power. Smart, Lyra added through their child's translation. Use cave, use physics. Human science with our technology. Sarah managed a weak smile. Great. Now we just need to figure out how many more are on Earth, and how to stop them without freezing the planet. The masking crystal pulsed with renewed energy. Vex touched it, their eyes swirling with determination. Not alone now. Earth has protector. Has you. Sarah looked at the lightning weapon, then at her alien companions. She'd wanted to study extraterrestrial life. Instead, she'd become part of Earth's first line of defense against an alien invasion that had already begun. The crystal's warmth spread through her frozen limbs, restoring her strength. Sometimes, she reflected, the most important scientific discoveries weren't just about understanding the universe, they were about protecting it. The research station emerged from the forest like a technological hermitage, a cluster of prefab buildings nestled against a cliff face, solar panels glinting in the afternoon sun. Sarah punched in her security code with trembling fingers, constantly scanning the sky for more emerald lightning. Lyra and Vex stood close together, their metallic skin reflecting the sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. The adult alien's wounds had nearly healed, leaving only faint traces like copper wire embedded in silver. Sarah ushered them inside just as another helicopter passed overhead, closer this time. "Welcome to my home away from home," Sarah said, securing the door. The aliens took in the laboratory equipment and monitoring stations with evident interest. Vex approached a computer display, and the screen responded to their proximity, pixels dancing in unusual patterns. Sarah noticed something else, the temperature in the room had dropped several degrees. The aliens seemed to generate a subtle cold field, more pronounced when they were anxious. An evolutionary adaptation for heat dissipation. She filed the observation away for later. Lyra made a series of crystalline tones, then touched their throat in frustration. They gestured to Vex, who approached Sarah with deliberate steps. The child reached for her hand, and Sarah steeled herself for another mental connection. Images flooded her mind, a vast empire of crystalline ships and stations, powered by something that looked like frozen lightning. A council chamber, Lyra standing before robed figures, arguing passionately. Then chaos, dark ships emerging from nowhere, weapons that seemed to eat light itself, desperate flight through something that twisted space like fabric. But this time, words accompanied the images, as if Vex was learning to translate concepts in real time. "Mother, warned them. Dark ones coming. Council not listen. Had to run." The child's mental voice was like wind chimes in a storm. When the connection broke, Sarah steadied herself against a desk. "You're refugees," she said. "Political refugees?" Lyra nodded, apparently understanding the concept if not the exact words. A warning tone from Sarah's security system interrupted them. Vehicle engines approached, multiple heavy trucks by the sound. Sarah rushed to her monitoring station. Through the camera feeds, she saw 3 black SUVs winding up the access road. "Government," she muttered. But which government? Her station was technically under university jurisdiction, but she dealt with enough agencies to know how quickly academic authority could be overridden. Lyra and Vex had retreated to a corner, their skin shifting to darker tones that seemed to absorb light. Sarah made a quick decision and led them to her specimen storage room. Behind a false wall panel was a small emergency shelter, intended for severe weather events, but it would serve their needs. "Stay here," she said, miming quiet. "I'll handle this." Vex grabbed her hand before she could leave, transmitting a burst of warning/fear/gratitude. The child pressed something into her palm, a crystal that hummed with inner light. Sarah concealed the crystal in her pocket just as knocking echoed through the station. She took a deep breath, straightened her research jacket, and went to meet her visitors. The man at the door wore a bland smile and a cheaper suit than his government salary should allow. "Dr. Chen. Agent Morris, Department of Energy. We detected some unusual radiation signatures in this area. Mind if we take a look around?" Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with her alien guest's temperature field. The Department of Energy's involvement in UFO investigation was well documented. "Do you have a warrant?" she asked, letting professional indignation color her tone. "Just a routine check, Doctor. Unusual atmospheric phenomena, possibly affecting your research equipment. We wouldn't want any interference with your important work." His smile never reached his eyes. "My equipment is sensitive," Sarah said. I can't risk contamination of my long-term climate studies. If you need to investigate, I'll have to document everything for my grant committee. Let me get the forms. She turned as if to search for paperwork. Dr. Chen. Morris's voice hardened. We both know what crashed in these mountains. The question is whether you're going to help us locate it, or if we need to do this the hard way. Sarah faced him again, channeling every frustrated researcher she'd ever known. What crashed? I've been analyzing soil samples all morning. If something happened, I was probably too focused on my mass spectrometer to notice. Do you know how hard it is to get funding for climate research these days? She launched into a detailed explanation of her research methodology, watching Morris's eyes glaze over. It was a technique she'd perfected in academic meetings, overwhelmed with technical details until they either gave up or showed their hand. Morris finally raised a hand to stop her. We'll need to search the premises. He gestured, and his team began unloading equipment from the vehicles. Sarah noticed some of it looked distinctly non-standard issue. Fine, she sighed. But I'll need to supervise. Some of this equipment is calibrated to measure changes over decades. One misalignment could ruin years of work. She followed Morris inside, mind racing. The crystal in her pocket grew warmer as the agents swept the station with their devices. Sarah kept up a running commentary about her research, carefully steering them away from the specimen storage room. Most of their equipment seemed focused on energy signatures rather than physical searches. After an hour of increasingly frustrated scanning, Morris finally called off the search. We'll be monitoring the area, he warned. If you notice anything unusual, you're required to report it immediately. Of course, Sarah said. Though the most unusual thing I've seen lately is how my funding keeps getting cut. She watched the SUVs depart, waiting until they were well out of sight before rushing back to her hidden guests. Lyra and Vex emerged from hiding, their skin gradually lightening from shadow dark to their normal metallic sheen. The crystal in Sarah's pocket pulsed once and went dark. She pulled it out, and Vex made a sound like tinkling glass, possibly their version of laughter. Hide signature, the child transmitted, touching the crystal. Mother's technology. Keep safe from dark ones. Sarah studied the crystal with new appreciation. You can mask your energy signatures. That's how you escaped. The implications were staggering, not just faster-than-light travel, but some way to hide from detection entirely. Lyra nodded, then swayed slightly. The healing had clearly taken a toll. Sarah helped them to her small living quarters, setting up a makeshift bed. As she worked, her mind spun with questions. What were these dark ones that had caused such fear in an advanced civilization? Why had the council ignored Lyra's warning? And most pressingly, how long could she keep two aliens hidden in a research station that was now under government surveillance? The crystal pulsed warmly in her pocket, as if responding to her concerns. Whatever came next, she was committed now. Sometimes the most important discoveries in science came with moral obligations attached. She just hoped she was ready for where this path might lead. Part 1. Dr. Sarah Chen never expected to make first contact while collecting soil samples in the Cascade Mountains. The autumn morning had started normally enough. She'd hiked out to her research sites, checking on the long-term climate monitoring stations she'd installed months ago. But everything changed when the sky crackled with emerald lightning. The atmospheric disturbance sent her equipment haywire. As she struggled to save her data, a piercing whine cut through the crisp mountain air. Sarah looked up just in time to see something massive and silver punch through the clouds, trailing smoke and fragments of what looked like crystalline metal. The object disappeared behind a ridge with a thunderous impact that shook the ground beneath her feet. Her scientific instincts warred with basic self-preservation. Whatever had just crashed was clearly not from Earth, and every science fiction movie she'd ever watched screamed at her to run the other way. But the researcher in her, the part that had driven her to pursue a doctorate in xenobiology despite academia's skepticism, propelled her forward. The crash site was surprisingly compact, a deep gouge in the earth maybe 30 meters long, ending in a partially buried silver pod. The object's surface seemed to ripple like liquid metal, despite being clearly solid. As Sarah approached, she noticed the air temperature dropping dramatically. Frost began forming on the vegetation around the crash site. A section of the pod's surface suddenly became transparent, revealing two figures inside. They were humanoid, but decidedly alien. Their skin had a metallic sheen that shifted between silver and pale blue, and their features were more angular than human norm. One was clearly injured, dark fluid seeping from multiple wounds. The other, smaller figure appeared to be a child. The transparent section dissolved, and the adult alien locked eyes with Sarah. Their irises were like swirling galaxies, and in that moment of connection, Sarah felt a profound sense of desperation and plea for help. The alien tried to speak, but only managed a series of musical tones before losing consciousness. Sarah's training kicked in. Alien or not, she had basic medical knowledge from her fieldwork. She quickly assessed the situation. The adult was bleeding heavily from what appeared to be energy weapon wounds, and both aliens were suffering from what looked like extreme cold exposure. The pod systems must have used their body heat for emergency landing power. "I'm going to help you," she said, knowing they probably couldn't understand but hoping her tone would convey her intentions. The child watched her with those cosmic eyes as she pulled emergency supplies from her research pack. The alien's blood was surprisingly similar to human plasma in consistency, allowing her emergency bandages to work effectively. As she worked, Sarah noticed something extraordinary. The alien's wounds seemed to slowly close on their own, their skin knitting together like liquid metal resolidifying. Some kind of accelerated healing factor. The implications for medical science were staggering, but she forced herself to focus on the immediate crisis. The child never left their parents' side, maintaining physical contact at all times. Sarah noticed their skin seemed to conduct energy between them, faint patterns of light flowing from the child to the adult. Some kind of biological energy transfer. The xenobiologist in her was fascinated, but there would be time for research later. The adult's eyes fluttered open after about an hour of treatment. They looked at Sarah with more focus now, then at their partially healed wounds. A series of musical tones emerged, different from before, more controlled. The child responded with similar sounds, and then turned to Sarah, reaching out slowly. Their small hand touched Sarah's forearm, and suddenly her mind exploded with images and emotions. A vast civilization of crystalline cities floating in space. Pursuit by dark ships through an asteroid field. Desperate flight through something that bent space itself. Terror, hope, gratitude, the feelings washed over her in waves. When the connection broke, Sarah sat back, stunned. The adult alien was watching her carefully. They touched their chest and made a sound like wind through crystal, Lyra. Then they gestured to the child, Vex. Finally, they pointed to their wounds, then to Sarah, and bowed their head slightly. "I'm Sarah," she replied, touching her own chest. "And you're welcome. But we need to get you somewhere safe. This crash site will attract attention." As if to emphasize her point, a distant helicopter's thrum echoed through the valley. The aliens tensed at the sound. Sarah made a quick decision. Her research station was only a few kilometers away, isolated, well-equipped, and off most official maps. She helped Lyra to their feet, noticing how surprisingly light they were despite their height. Vex stayed close, one hand always maintaining contact with their parent. As they began their careful journey through the forest, Sarah's mind raced with implications. First contact had always been humanity's dream, but now that it had happened, the weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. These beings needed her help, and judging by those energy weapon wounds, they were running from something. What had she just gotten herself involved in? The scientist in her thrilled at the opportunity to study actual alien life. But the human in her recognized the look in Lyra's eyes, it was the same look she'd seen in refugee camps during her humanitarian work. Whatever they were fleeing from, it was serious enough to cross interstellar space. The helicopter sound grew closer. Sarah quickened their pace, using her knowledge of the terrain to keep them under tree cover. She had no idea what would come next, but one thing was certain: her life's work studying potential alien biology had not prepared her for actually helping alien refugees. As they reached the crest of a ridge, Vex suddenly stopped and pointed at the sky. Through breaks in the canopy, Sarah could see more emerald lightning beginning to form. Whatever had brought them here, more were coming. The real question was, were they friends or enemies? Based on Lyra's reaction, her skin shifting to a darker, almost chrome-like tone, Sarah suspected the latter. They needed to reach the research station before those lights reached the ground. Sometimes, Sarah reflected as they hurried down the ridge, the most important scientific discoveries weren't the ones you went looking for, but the ones that quite literally fell into your lap. She just hoped she was ready for whatever came next.